Thank you for joining me for another video, and we are now on day four of the creation series of the series that is going through the book of Genesis. So we talked about very extensively um, the first day where light was created. We talked about the second day where a life-supporting atmosphere was created. Then we talked about last week. We talked about the third day of creation, where land masses were formed and populated by vegetation that eventually evolved its way to using seeds, which is great. Um, Unless, of course, you live in one of those places where if you've got seeds that get burned, that really just sort of wakes up the seed, because that's usually things like tumbleweeds and stuff like that. So I live in Florida now. I used to live in New Mexico, which is mostly desert. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, but there are tumbleweeds everywhere. It looks awfully similar to what you're going to see in most westerns. Most of the stereotypical westerns anyway. Just figured that I'd throw that out there. Today we're going to be talking about the fourth day of creation, and that's actually a really fun one because it is the first one that directly affects Israel. In the sense that it gives us more than just a place to live safely, air to breathe, that sort of thing. So you can turn with me. You don't have to. But you can turn with me to Genesis 1. We're going to read verses 14 through 19. And again, I'm just going to read the Hebrew and translate it. The reason that I'm doing that, I have a couple of reasons for doing that, but the reason that I'm doing that specifically is because copyright issues, and I'm not going to read from the King James Version, which I could get away with copyright-wise, at least as long as I'm in the U.S. I could get away with it, but I'm not going to read from the King James Version of the Bible because it's not my Bible. Mine is in Hebrew. That being said, verse 14, let's jump into it. ויאמר אלוהים יהי מאורות ברקיע השמיים להבדיל בין יום ובין הלילה והיו לעשות למועדים ולימים ולשנים והיו למאורות ברקיע השמיים להאיר על הארץ ויהי כן ויעש אלוהים את שני המאורות הגדולים את המאור הגדול לממשלת היום ואת המאור הקטון לממשלת הלילה ואת הכוכבים. I love it. It's just like, oh yeah, and the stars, those two. וייתן אותם אלוהים ברקיע השמיים להאיר על הארץ ולמשול ביום ובלילה ולהבדיל בין האור ובין החושך וירא אלוהים כי טוב ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום רביעי. Okay, so it tells us that God spoke up and he said, let there be lights. Let's put lights in the sky, in the firmament of the heavens, to separate between day and night, or to distinguish between day and night. And they shall be for signs and for moadim, like festivals or appointed times. I think some translations will translate it as appointed times, and for days and for years. And they will be lights. There should be for light in the firmament of the heavens to illuminate or to provide light for on the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the great luminaries, let's call it. The larger one, the larger light to rule the day, and the smaller light to rule the night, and the stars. This is where I had a little chuckle earlier. And the stars. Just because of how it's worded, it's funny. And God... So we're going to translate this as "and God placed them." It literally means "and God gave them," but I'm going to translate it as "God placed them in the firmament of the heavens for to shine on the earth, to illuminate the earth." To rule the day and the night, and to distinguish between light and between darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning, a fourth day. Yeah, a fourth day, not the fourth day, a fourth day. And you're going to find that all throughout the creation narrative, the first creation narrative, and we'll talk about what I mean by that once we get to chapter 2, because there is a second creation narrative. So we'll talk about what I mean by the first creation narrative then. But you're going to find that every day of creation is a second day, a third day, not the, a. I'll go back and double check on that actually, because I don't want to give you false information. שלישי, שני, רביעי, חמישי. So there is one, the sixth day, Friday. It does say Yom HaShishi, the sixth day. Now that I've taken up a lot of time translating the text and reading the text, let's talk about it. So this is, as you may have guessed, the creation of the sun, moon, and stars. The creation of the sun, moon, and stars. Now, if you remember the principle that I was talking about, I believe it was last week, that the things that are created are not considered to be created until they are in their final form. And I have previously said that the sun, the moon, and the stars were created before the fourth day. The light from them just never reached the earth. Well, now that we're reaching the fourth day, or a fourth day, I should say, it's kind of interesting that it words it that way, because it's like, how many fourth days could there possibly be, right? Well, it means Wednesday. In modern Hebrew. That's just how you say, and even in biblical Hebrew, that's just how you say Wednesday. Sunday is Yom Rishon, the first day. And then it just kind of Yom Sheni, Yom Shalishi, it just kind of progresses through that. I forgot where I was going, so I'm just going to jump back to my notes because that's what we do when we don't remember what to do. So this whole thing, this whole fourth day of creation, the creation of the sun, moon, and star, creation of sun, moon, and stars, took place after what's called the Permian-Triassic mass extinction event. Now, that sounds pretty cataclysmic, and it absolutely was. Okay, up until now, you need to bear in mind the atmosphere, regardless of how much light was let through, the atmosphere was still relatively opaque. You wouldn't be able to see. It was really rather faint light, the light that was actually able to come through, which may actually contribute to the fact that we know that at one point in Earth's history, there were giant fungi everywhere, mushrooms as tall as a house, actually even taller. Massive mushrooms that could grow as tall as the redwoods. And if you don't know what a redwood tree is, that's okay. I'm right there with you. I've never actually seen one, but I'm told they're very, very tall. So there's that. But big, tall mushrooms, right? You don't get tall mushrooms in a bright environment. Fungus loves an environment that's abnormally damp. Well, maybe not abnormally, but it's quite damp and generally not very bright. So if you've got a slightly drier climate in a place where there's a lot of sunlight, say for example you're in the middle of a desert, you're not going to find a mushroom in a desert. I mean, you'll find them if you bring them there, but you're not going to find them naturally occurring the majority of the time, at least not in the main portion of the desert. You may find it in an oasis, but that's a different climate there. It's a different biome, if you will. So, and the atmosphere from the time of the formation of the planet Earth until at some point after the Permian-Triassic mass extinction event, we're going to call that the PT event for short. There was not much sunlight coming through the atmosphere. The atmosphere was quite opaque. However, let's look at what the PT event did. Okay, so around 252 million years ago, there were a series of volcanic eruptions in the Siberian Traps. Okay, Siberia, this is the Russia, right? Traps, I assume, is a mountain range. I don't know. I didn't look that up. I just know that I hear people talk about it. So I assume it's a mountain range because volcanoes, but I could be very wrong. I don't know. Don't quote me on it. So these volcanoes, they all start going off around 252 million years ago or so, give or take, maybe 5 minutes or so. How long ago was this? All of the years, all of them, every single one. So they start going off, and as the name implies, this PT event, this mass extinction event, resulted in the mass extinction of most life on Earth at the time. It acidified the seas. It made them very sulfuric. It made the atmosphere very tough to breathe. A lot of carbon dioxide, a lot of methane, a lot of other gases that are really not so great for breathing. Those were all there and increased in their abundance, if you will. It's just weird to say increased in abundance. It's almost like I've been reading a Bible, right? So yeah, it caused a mass extinction of animal life. It also caused a mass extinction of plant life as well. Now, this is the important part. There were quite a few species that did survive, okay? That survived well into the Triassic period. Okay, now the volcanic ash just wreaked absolute holy hell on the planet. Like, it just unleashed a... so you've heard the term nuclear holocaust, you've heard the term nuclear winter, especially if you're a fan of science fiction like I am. This is that. This is exactly that. This is what, for any higher intelligence species that may have been around at the time, this would be their apocalypse. Okay, this is Ragnarok. This is the death of most of everything. Okay, and it didn't help that there was volcanic ash in the air and made it hard to breathe. It destroyed local ecosystems, destroyed global ecosystems for that matter. It, like I said, it just wreaked absolute havoc. And it wasn't until the middle of the Triassic period that plant and animal life actually fully recovered. Now that brings us to the Torah's fourth day of creation, when the sun, moon, and stars were created in their current form. And by their current form, I'm not referring to their exact placement in the sky. I'm referring to as we can see them today. So what happened? Well, over time, the atmospheric debris fell down. It took it a while, but it fell down. It came down, through rain, through wind, through whatever. I'm sure that there were quite a few different natural processes that contributed to this debris that was sort of suspended in the atmosphere, just sort of falling down to the ground. So as it fell to the ground, a new day dawned, and I mean that very literally. This was the very first time in all of Earth's history that the atmosphere became translucent, and any life that was alive on the planet could actually look up into the sky and see in the night sky, for the first time in all history, stars, the sun, the moon. Not that the animals that were around at the time would have particularly enjoyed it so much, just that it was there. Okay, it could be seen. So this is the time that, from the perspective of the surface of the planet, the sun, moon, and stars suddenly just sort of came into being, right? Because, again, it's not created unless it's in its final form, meaning it's in the final usable form. Okay, so let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that, right? So something's not considered done until, or something's not considered made until it is put into its fullest form. So, the ascription in the Tanakh, for example, of, we say, oh, Solomon, he built all the, he built the temple and he built everything that was in the temple. Well, no, he didn't, actually. He didn't build, he probably, honestly, built absolutely nothing, right? He just probably contributed money to it, and paid people to do it for him, right? Well, as it turns out, his father did a lot of that, but because it wasn't, it didn't reach its fullest form until the temple was built and properly furnished, David doesn't get credit for, making. I mean, he gets credit for it, but he doesn't. He gets credit for helping, but he doesn't get credit for actually doing it, for actually building anything, because it wasn't finished until it was under Solomon's command. And if you don't, if that seems a little strange to you, you don't really know what I'm talking about, go look it up. It's, I think it's in 2 Samuel. It's in one of the Samuels. It's in the book of Samuel, for certain. Probably in 2 Samuel. I think that's how they say it in English, 2 Samuel, maybe 2 Samuel. I don't even know anymore. Wow. So, yes, back to what's going on at the world of creation. So, finally, at long last, the stars, the sun, the moon, all visible from the surface of the earth. The Torah places it on the fourth day. Because it finally reached its conclusion at this point, which is why it places it here rather than shortly after the Big Bang event. Let's say event. Which, by the way, the Torah actually kind of mentions in passing. It doesn't call it the Big Bang. It just sort of, says that everything suddenly was. It's interesting. The book of Genesis actually opens with a preformed earth and a preformed sun and a preformed heavens, moon, stars, all the planets and everything. The Torah actually opens with it all already made. It just doesn't really get into too much of how it all came into being initially. It just sort of says, listen, so first God made it in this stage, and then after that it was this stage, and then after that was this stage, and so on and so forth. Now, I mentioned earlier in this video that the creation of the sun, moon, and stars are the first direct or the first creations to have a direct impact on Israel. What do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about that for a second. As it turns out, we are given a reason in the Torah itself for why these things are there in the sky, right? Obviously, okay, we all know the scientific reason. You're not going to have any life on the planet if there's no sun, there's no moon. You're just not going to. No life that we would be familiar with anyway. So it has to be there to sustain life. But one of the things that the Torah specifically says is that they're there to mark seasons. They're there to mark the years and the days and the festivals, the appointed times, the seasons, right? So this is a cosmic, a celestial timepiece, if you will. This is God's way of telling Israel, hey, this is what you're going to be using these things for, right? So why do I say that? Well, because at the time that Israel became a nation, people were worshiping the sun, moon, and stars. Okay, the creation account says no. You don't worship them. God made them. They're worthless without God. You can't worship them. They have no power in and of themselves. They are quite powerful in terms of the energy that they put out. You've got the biggest nuclear reaction in the entire solar system, just a mere 8 light minutes away from us. like 93 million miles or something like that away from us. And I don't know. I don't know what other power it might have, but that's a lot of energy that's generated, right? Um, Stars out there. There are bigger stars. There are more powerful stars out there in space, out there somewhere, probably over there. That are bigger and meaner and more powerful than our sun, right? The moon. Okay, so that's just basically a floating rock. It was kind of funny if you think about it like that. Just got a rock just floating in the sky, just there for no reason at all. No, it controls the tides. That's the tidal forces. It controls um, which is also how you know that it pre-existed the fourth day of creation, meaning it had to have existed before the fourth day of creation, even if it couldn't be seen, because there were tides. Naturally, because that's just the way that the world works. So yeah, they've got these powers. They have these domains that God has given them to rule, but they're not able to do anything in and of themselves, right? They don't have, like in some science fiction and in some religions, they don't have like avatars that that are representative of the person of the sun. I mean, it's not. It's not the television show Andromeda, from dear Lord, it's been 20-ish years now ago that show was out. It's a good show if you haven't seen it. It's a good show. You should definitely give it a watch. I enjoy it, but there is a race on there that are called the avatars of the stars, which are the avatars of actual stars. These stars are alive. So that's not what we're seeing in the Torah. In fact, the Torah specifically tells us, listen, they're there to mark the times for you. That's it. They're not there to worship. They're not there to, ascribe any greatness to necessarily. In fact, they themselves, according to the Psalms, ascribe greatness to Hashem. They, like all of their purpose, beyond the controlling the natural forces and everything, is to just draw attention to God. So there's that. That's cool. So now, what do I mean when I say that these are cosmic timepieces? Well, as it happens, there are 365 days in a solar year. Jews do not have a strictly solar calendar, though. The people of Israel, our calendar is we call it a lunisolar calendar. It's one of the few in the world that actually is lunisolar. Which means we have a lunar calendar composed of 12 lunar months, right? So a lunar month is approximately 29 and a half days. It's actually, like an hour or so more than 29 and a half days. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to say that a lunar month is 29 and a half days, right? So if you take 29 and a half days, you multiply that by 12, you come up with 354. But wait a second, I thought that there were 365 days in a solar year. Yes, there absolutely are. So there's an 11-day discrepancy there. And what you're going to see and this is where we get into the cool stuff with the calendar, what you're going to see is as time passes by each year, the date will fall back 11 days prior to the year before. So just for kicks and giggles, let's walk this out. Okay, so you've got let's go with New Year's Day. Okay, so you've got January the 1st. This year it's January the 1st. Next year it would fall, assuming that it were just off of a strictly lunar calendar, it would fall 11 days prior to January 1st. So it would fall, what is that, the 22nd? No, 21st, I think, of, I don't even know how many days December has, of December, but you get the idea, right? So, I think it has 31, just off the top of my head. So, you'd think I would know that, almost 40 years old, you would assume by this point I'd be intimately familiar with that. It's just not a high priority, though. So, how do we have a lunar solar calendar? How do we, so what do we do to it? Okay, so we have a lunar calendar that has 12 lunar months. So 12 times 29.5 is going to put you at 354, almost at 254. That would be a big discrepancy. That would be a problem. But you still got these 11 days that you have to do something with, because the Torah tells us that we have to observe Passover in the springtime every year. Okay, so if we had just a solar or a lunar calendar. Okay, so it might be in the spring this year, but in 5 years' time it won't be anymore, because now it's 2.5 months prior. So instead of being in, let's say, April, it's going to be, which is, if you're in the southern hemisphere, April is springtime in the northern hemisphere. I realize that's your autumn, but that's okay. So so we're going to see that, rather than being in April in 5 years' time, it's going to be back in, let's say, February, okay, which for us is still winter, if you're in the southern hemisphere. So we got to have some way to make up for that, some way to account for that, some way to bring the make sure that the Passover holiday stays in springtime. Aha! Enter the sun. Because remember, we're using the sun, moon, and stars, all three of them, or all however many stars there are. We're going to refer to the stars collectively as a collective noun. Okay, so the stars, the sun and the moon, all three of them together are used to calculate our calendar calculations, right? So now we've got, here's where it gets really interesting. We have every 2 to 3 years, approximately, we have a 13th month that we just sort of throw in there, and we're just like, aha, look here, a 13th month. You weren't expecting that, were you, pagans? Ha ha ha. I assume that's how the first generation of Jews did it. Probably wasn't, but that keeps Passover in the springtime all the time. Now it could fall theoretically in the early spring, or it could theoretically fall in the late spring, but it will still always be in the spring, or it could fall really anywhere in between, which is why Hanukkah, the holiday of Hanukkah, is some years it's right around Christmas time. Other years it's very not. There was my personal favorite. Around 11 or 12 years ago or so, Hanukkah fell on Thanksgiving here in the United States, which is I think it's the fourth Thursday of the month of November, which is super early. That's the earliest I've ever seen it in my life. Coincidentally, it is the earliest that it will ever be for the next 400 years or so. I don't know who calculated that, but in around 400 years or so, it's going to happen again. Hanukkah and Thanksgiving, that's assuming that Thanksgiving is still a holiday and still held on that date, will fall on the same date. So sometimes it falls all the way back in November. Sometimes it can actually fall as late as January, just sort of depending on what year it is and when the last 13th month was added. So there's a lot that I could get into about that, but very briefly, I'm just going to tell you a very little bit about the calendar months, and then I'm going to sign off. So there are 12 months on the Hebrew calendar, right? So every 2 to 3 years, roughly, we'll add an extra month. So the months are, biblically, they're not named until we get to the exilic books, the books that took place during the Babylonian exile, when they're given different names. Okay, today we have names for them. So right now we're currently in the month of Iyar. At the time of my recording this, it's the month of Iyar. It'll be the month of Siwan by the time you see this. But those are not our ancestral names for those months, right? So the first month of the year is Nisan, that's what we call it now. Then comes Iyar, then comes Siwan, right? So in biblical times, before the exile, they were just called the first month, the second month, the third month, the fourth month, so on and so forth, right? They weren't given names. I don't know why we go by the names now, but that's just the way that it is. The 13th month, this is where it gets fun. So the 12th month of the year is called Adar. That's the month of my birth, as it just so happens. The 18th of Adar, if anyone was curious. You can look up when that is. The 12th month is called Adar. But in years when we add a 13th month, the second month that 13th month is also called Adar. So you have Adar Aleph and Adar Bet, the literally Adar 1 and Adar 2, the first and second months of Adar. It's funny. It is funny. But one of the things that makes it really interesting is I can, in those years, when we have 13 months, I can get away with celebrating my birthday twice. So that's cool. Although I don't. The year I was born was not a leap year. I was born in 1986, so there was only 1 month of Adar that year. So it is what it is. So my birthday is the 18th of the first month of Adar. So yeah, cool stuff. Anyway, that being said, I am done. I actually had more to fill time than I thought I would, so that's cool. Yeah, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and share it with everyone you know and love. Or if you didn't enjoy it, share it with the people that you hate. That's funny. Just so that you get all kind of, what is this? What is going on here? Because that's funny. Because some people just want to watch the world burn. If you have not yet, like this video. Hit the like button, not just, be like, ooh, I really enjoyed this. And subscribe to this channel. Turn the notifications on for this channel. Then go over to Facebook. Type in the search bar an unorthodox Jew, find me there, like/follow, whatever the case may be, and say howdy, Send me a message if you want. I'll respond, I promise you. Ask questions. If you have questions about this or about anything else, you can ask in the comments section. You can ask in the messages, in the private messages on Facebook if you want. If it's one of those things that you don't really want to, get out there that it was you. There are a couple of people like that already. They're like, hey, listen, I don't want this to come out that it was me, but got a question for you. That being said, I'm done. Go find me on Facebook. Say howdy. Like and share all my stuff because you love me or something. I don't know. So, anyway, until next time, shalom.